All right. Do we have anyone else waiting to get in? I can't tell. All right. I'm going to go ahead and mute everybody so it doesn't get too distracting. We'll get started here in a second, but just kind of wanted to welcome everybody. It's finally happening. This is our first Zoom. So just want to kind of go into some disclaimers. We have no Zoom experience, so we may experience technical difficulties. We may get halfway through this and our camera could die, or we could lose audio. It shouldn't happen because we have spent a little bit of time preparing, but if it does, just be patient with us and we will do our best to get everything back working as soon as possible. A couple other disclaimers. Have a little bit of ADHD, so I may jump from one thing to another. People often joke about the fact that Melissa and I share a brain. She is usually the memory part of the brain, so she'll try to bring me back around to wherever I was if we get off track. Hey, Matt, good to see you. It's been a long time. We really just want to keep this casual. We want it to be interactive. We will kind of try to keep an eye on the chat, but it may be kind of difficult as we go through this. If we miss a question in the chat, we just ask that you guys would use the hand raising system. I don't know if you know how to use it or not, but you will either have down at the bottom of your screen, it might say raise hand, or if it says reactions and you select reactions, and it looks like Kyler's going to keep an eye on the chat for us. So at the bottom, there's should say reactions. Under reactions, you should be able to raise your hand and then we'll know you have a question. We prefer that if you're going to ask a question, you turn your video on so that we can see you and interact with you. So I apologize that you have to listen to my voice for the next hour or 2 hours or however long this goes. We'll go as long as you guys have questions within reason. I always say I have a face for radio, but not a voice for radio. So sorry if you have to listen to me. I'm a little bit monotone. My voice gets a little bit scratchy. I have water here, so and I drink lots of water. So if I have to run to the bathroom, forgive me. And I'll hurry and I won't take the time to wash my hands so you guys don't have to wait too long. So, all right. We talked about the hand raising system. If anybody has just joined, if you want to ask a question, feel free to raise your hand. We will see that you have your hand raised, depending on where we're at. We might go to you immediately, or we might finish what we're talking about. Depending on how the flow is going, we may answer some questions in the middle, but we kind of want to go through some of the stuff that we have to go through just because we may talk about something that you have a question about. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and get started. I'm sure most of you know this is Melissa. I'm Jeremy. We run a real estate team in the Seattle area, southeast of Seattle in Maple Valley, Washington. Melissa mainly runs the real estate team, and I kind of run the investment side, which is most of what we'll be talking about tonight. So just want to welcome everyone. Thanks for taking the time out to come out and be with us, and hopefully we can teach you something. We're going to be talking about subject 2. And we'll go into that a little bit. Just know I am relatively new. I didn't even know about this until probably October of last year. So when I dive into something, I tend to learn pretty quickly and immerse myself in it. And so I feel like I know a decent amount, but there's probably some people on the Zoom that know more than me. So if you do, feel free to raise your hand and we'll bring you up and we can chat about it. But yeah, I guess let's get started.
Awesome. So Jeremy, why are we doing this today?
That's a good question. My wife actually asked me the exact same thing. Why are you doing this? You're obviously busy. I have 7 kids, for those of you that don't know. And so I think I have 7. Yeah. So I'm obviously busy. I have a lot going on in my life. And so it's a reasonable question for my wife to ask, what are you going to get out of this? What are you going to get out of spending your time teaching other people? Because we're buying real estate across the US. It doesn't necessarily benefit our real estate team, which is our main business, to share all of this. I've had other people ask me, why, now that you know this, why would you not keep it a secret? My only answer to that is I'm just not the kind of person to want to hold something to myself. I want the people around me to get value. And I wish I would have known about what we're doing 10 years ago, because I feel like our life would look a little bit different. And so I want to bring that to all of you as soon as I possibly can, and hopefully improve your lives as well. So with that being said, we really don't get anything out of sharing this with people. But if you're local to the Maple Valley area and you have real estate needs, obviously we would appreciate the business. If you're not, there's a lot of real estate agents on here from other parts of the country. If you have a referral in this area, obviously we'd love to be your go-to. So yeah, that's kind of what we get out of it.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing your time tonight.
Yep.
Thank you, Molly, for sharing Jeremy tonight. So tell us a little bit about what you've been doing lately and why.
Yeah. So just going back a little bit, obviously I've been in real estate for, about 21, 22 years, something like that. And I've always been interested in investing, and I've been an investor. We've done quite a few fix and flips. But I haven't really gotten into the long-term rental world. I haven't been active at holding properties, which if I had over the last 7 to 10 years, my financial situation would probably look a little bit different. So, with that being said, when interest rates changed here, a year or so ago, I found myself saying, I wish I could go back in time. I wish I could go back in time and buy as many houses as I possibly could at the lower interest rates, which I feel like, hindsight's 2020. Once I knew the whole time I should be buying properties, but I just was flipping instead of holding. And my wife's smarter than me. She mentioned several times we should be holding real estate, and I didn't listen. But I found myself saying, I wish I could go back in time and, buy as many houses as I could with, 2, 3, 4% interest rates after they had jumped up. And we were at a real estate event actually in Arizona back in, I think it was October or November. And a guy named Pace was on stage and came and he talked about subject to buying houses subject to. And up until this point, I didn't even know that this existed. Now, this has been around for a very long time. People have been doing it forever. But I think as real estate agents and mortgage people, it's really easy to only pay attention to what we've been taught, what mindset we have from going to real estate school, and not really being open to other ways of doing business. In fact, that's, those are probably the 2 people that just can't wrap their mind around what we're doing because they've been taught a certain way. And I can tell you, I'm pretty guilty of that. If somebody had come to me, an investor came to me on one of my listings, even if I was having trouble selling it prior to gaining the knowledge that I have now, I would have blown them off and not really taken them seriously. It just wouldn't sound right to me. So I'm glad I approached it with an open mind and dug into it more before I judged it right away. But a lot of the people that, real estate agents, I feel like when there's a real estate agent involved in the transactions that we've done, we've had a couple deals almost fall apart because rightfully so, real estate agents feel like they need to protect their clients. And sometimes they go a little bit overboard and they really end up hurting the transaction just because they don't understand something. So that's been a little bit of a challenge. One of our bigger challenges is when there's a real estate agent involved in the transaction and they aren't sub-2 students, which we're going to talk about a little bit, or they haven't been subjected to creative real estate transactions. They tend to stand in the way a little bit.
Yep. So you keep talking about sub-2. Can you explain to us?
Yeah, I'm going to take a drink of water.
Us people who don't know what that means.
Yeah, so subject to, kind of the base version of that is you're purchasing a home subject to a lien. So subject to the mortgage. It could be subject to anything, really. It could be subject to any lien. It could be a solar lien. We see a lot across the country. You're basically purchasing the home and the lien, or obviously it's all negotiable. So at least the mortgage is staying attached to the property. So the deed transfers. The deed transfers into your name, and this is one thing that's really hard for some people to get their mind around. But the deed of trust, or the mortgage and the deed are two separate instruments. And so the deed can transfer and the mortgage can stay on the property. So that's basically in a nutshell what sub-2 is.
We've seen on Facebook, you've been buying a lot of properties lately. What are you doing with all of them?
I've been so busy lately, I haven't been doing anything with them, which is a problem. So that's what I'm going to be doing. That's what I'm going to be doing. What's that?
I said, don't share that with everyone.
Oh, yeah. So I bought a handful of properties. We're now going through what we're doing with each of those properties. I have several more under contract. One we went under contract on yesterday, one late last week. So I joked that I'm going to, sorry, I'm trying to read this comment here. Okay. And so, yeah, this is where I need you to be my memory. So where was I?
You closed on one.
Yeah, I forget what I was saying, but basically what we're doing with them is we're buying properties and either renting them out as long-term rentals. Everybody pretty much knows what that is. So we're taking over mortgages, say, 3.5%, and we're holding them long-term, renting them out, and just basically collecting the spread from the payment to the rental amount. So there's another strategy. One of our exit strategies is wrapping the properties. So we'll take over that mortgage at 3.5%, 2.75, whatever it is. And we will resell the property to a buyer that most of the time who we're selling to are people that don't qualify traditionally. So people who own their own business, have a lot of write-offs, have an income where the majority of their income is tips, and they're not writing it off, or they're not claiming their income.
Foreign people who U.S. credit.
Yep, people who I-10 buyers who are here on a work visa. There's all kinds of different situations that people can't qualify traditionally, or they just can't qualify the traditional way, or they have to put a significant amount of money down, 20 or 25%, and they're called non-QM buyers. And so they would be paying, probably at today's rate, probably 9 or 10% to give you something to kind of compare it to. So we're wrapping the mortgage. We're basically giving them owner finance terms. We're paying the underlying lien, the underlying mortgage at 2 or 3%, whatever it is. And they put a down payment, say, 20 or 25% is what they would have to do, even if they went through a non-QM product. We'll do 10 or 15% down. It gets us our money back that we put into the deal initially. And then we'll wrap it at, somewhere between 6.5% and 8.5%, depending on the situation. So sometimes, say we put 10% down, and we collect 15% down. Obviously, we make money there. We're making money on the monthly payment. Say the monthly payment's $1,200 a month on the underlying lien, and the new payment's $2,200 a month. We're making $1,000 spread. In addition, we're raising the price. A lot of times, we're able to get properties a little bit under market value, but even if we're not, we're able to raise the price 10 to 15% because they don't qualify elsewhere, and there's not a lot of opportunities for people to buy a home. So we're able to charge a little bit more for them. So if they do refi us out, say they qualify in 2 or 3 years, they refi us out, we get that spread of, whatever amount we were able to increase the price. So there's a few different ways that we make money when we wrap a property. Those have been our only 2 exits so far. I'm kind of trying to do a little bit of everything. Kyler is on the Zoom today. We actually partnered on a property yesterday, and we're going to do a midterm rental. So kind of what that is exactly what it sounds like, a 30, 60, 90-day rental. A lot of people that utilize that is, traveling nurses, stuff like that. So
more and more common.
Yeah. Lots of people that do them. Kyler has more knowledge on that than I do. So I am open to partnering with people. He brings a lot of value to the table on that transaction, because I don't know what I'm doing with midterm rentals. So
if you guys appreciate this and get a lot from this, then we'll be able to do specific ones about specific topics.
Yep.
That'll be the future. I have a hard time managing the house I live in and getting everything done and making appointments. How are we going to do this out of state?
Yeah, so there's really 2 ways to do it. Obviously, you can hire a property manager in the area that the home is in. I have so far chosen not to do that. And the reason is, and I could be wrong, I feel like property managers, I just feel like they, yeah, I'm trying to tread lightly in case there's any on here. Obviously, they're helpful in renting the property, but in my opinion, no more helpful than finding a local real estate agent that can be boots on the ground for me, and I pay them. In fact, I think one of them's on here from a house that I bought in Alabama. And so, I reach out to a real estate agent in the area. I look for, just to kind of give you guys what I'm looking for. Hopefully that's helpful. What was that? Sorry, we're having a technical difficulty. Hopefully everyone can still see and hear us. Let us know if you can't, or if, I guess, somebody let us know if you can. But what I'm looking for is, I'm looking for an agent who does business, but somebody who is not doing hundreds of transactions a year, because they're obviously not going to have the time to do what we need to do. So I look for somebody who is at least productive and does some transactions, knows what they're doing in real estate. And I reach out and just offer to pay them to do what I need done. And I feel like a lot of times it ends up being a lot cheaper. The reason is I'm not paying monthly. So I don't mind paying upfront, but yeah, I don't like paying 10% or whatever it is a month for them to collect a check for me, which I use a program called Turbo Tenant. And through that, I'm able to take applications, advertise for a renter. I collect payments through there. I communicate with the renters through there.
Technology has made it much easier.
Yeah. So at some point, I can't say that I will never hire one, but I at that point, I think we would probably, I don't know, we'd probably build something in house to manage it. And then, the other thing that people think of is, well, what happens when the house needs work or the water heater goes out or something like that? My opinion is our real estate team can call somebody to get them out there just as easily as, the property manager. So we're still managing them. We just manage them the same way they do. We just can't go to the house. But in that situation, I would just reach out to somebody who could go to the house if necessary. Or, I mean, most times you have to figure the renter could probably be there whenever somebody's coming to fix a water heater or something. So, yeah, that's the way we're handling it so far.
Awesome. We're making friends in the chat with people that want to help when things come up.
Oh, sweet.
That's awesome. So why do you want to do it this way as a buyer? Why?
There's a lot of benefits to the buyer. We've talked about them a little bit on Facebook, if you guys have been watching our posts. But even if you could go back in time, which is one of the things that I thought about a lot, if you could go back in time and you could purchase rental properties or properties you're holding long term, there's only so many properties that you can buy, because most investment loans, your interest rate automatically, you're going to be probably around 1% higher than standard rates. You're going to be putting 20 to 25% down. That adds up quick. So a lot of these properties, like the one that we put under contract yesterday, we're putting 5% down. Kind of where that comes from, just to give you a little bit of insight, is, if there's a wholesaler involved, a wholesaler is somebody who goes and finds a seller who wants to sell creatively. They're open to terms. They basically they advertise to find these properties, and then they'll take them and sell that contract to buyers. So most of the properties I'm buying are from wholesalers. So there's could be a wholesale fee, $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, depending on the equity situation of the seller. There could be a $10,000 cash payment to the seller at closing. There could be, they may carry a contract, say they have $100,000 in equity. They might want $20,000 up front and, $80,000 over time. In that situation, we're getting sellers to carry that contract at, somewhere between 0 to 3% interest. So it still allows us to cash flow. But I think the biggest thing for buyers is you don't have to qualify. And so, you're not getting your credit pulled. You're not having to put as much money down so you can buy more properties. You're not assuming a loan. A lot of people think that we're assuming loans. We're not assuming loans. So, in order to assume a loan, you have to basically go through the qualification process. When you're purchasing subject to, there's no credit checks. They're not pulling your credit. They're not looking at anything. They're not looking at your income. None of that really matters. So that's, I guess, in a nutshell, those are I'm sure there's other benefits that I'm forgetting, but those are really the benefits. Probably
the biggest benefit that you've seen is like when we were trying to buy Airbnb, just the qualifying process was so insane. Yeah,
I mean,
it almost felt like it wasn't worth it.
I bought a vacation house and I tell people this all the time. I put 50% down. And I mean, it was through a lender that I know. I know the lender is competent, but they have boxes that they have to check. And so, I'm putting 50% down. I had more than enough assets. I could have paid cash for the property if I wanted to. Obviously, I didn't. I was getting a loan. But I had to send in like 47 different pieces of financial information. And I'm sitting there thinking, why is it this hard for me to get a loan? I've got a very high credit score. The loan to value is extremely low. The bank should want me to default on this loan so that they can take the house back. And I'm like, this is insane. So qualifying for a mortgage can be tough. I mean, I don't even know how many properties I've purchased since October. But I can tell you there's no way that I could have done that without the way that we're doing it now.
Awesome. So obviously that all makes sense. Why would a seller want to do this?
So a lot of times these are sellers, and kind of our favorite situation is when there's low equity. Somebody who has purchased, in the last few years, the market hasn't gone up quite as much as they need it to be able to walk away with a bunch of equity. There's a lot of situations why people may not have equity. A lot of areas, we're in the Seattle area, so our market's gone up pretty quickly. Some of these other markets in the Midwest and the South, they don't go up as fast. So it takes a little bit longer to gain enough equity even to cover the cost to sell. And so, a lot of military situations, we find a lot of military area deals that we end up purchasing. One, they're great for long-term rentals because you have a current flow, a steady flow of
relocating people.
Yeah. So, that keeps your renters consistent, but they also get moved a lot, and so that's one situation where we see it pretty frequent. But now I mentioned low equity in subject to transactions. The way that it's a little bit different than a traditional transaction is a lot of times, there's a couple things. One thing is we're holding them long term. The most important thing to us is that they cash flow, right? So market value may only be $400,000, but we may be able to pay $420,000 or $425,000 because we know we're going to hold it long term and it cash flows. So, as long as it cash flows long term rental, we're not really worried about the market going down. We're not really worried about, having to sell the property and being underwater because it cash flows. So, with the exception of extreme vacancies, which would be uncommon, especially if the real estate market went down, in that situation, there would probably be more renters. People are losing their homes. There'd probably be a higher demand for rentals. But one of the ways that these transactions are a little bit different is a lot of times if there's an agent involved, traditionally, the seller is paying the agent, the seller's paying their closing costs, excise tax if they have it in the state. Washington does. Several states do, but Washington's definitely the highest that I've seen. In these types of transactions, the buyer is paying most of those fees. They're paying the escrow company or the attorney to close the transaction, depending on if it's an escrow or attorney state. So we're covering a lot of their fees for them, and so they're walking away with a much higher net price. So yeah, that's really the benefits for the seller.
And then convenience.
For sure, yeah.
Not having to be on the market and deal with showings and prepping the house and all that kind of stuff. So I'm sure a lot of people are thinking what I thought the whole time Pace was talking the first time. This feels illegal, seems illegal. Can you talk to that?
Yeah, it's definitely not illegal. There is, if you look in the IRS tax code, it actually tells you how to handle the taxes on taking over somebody's mortgage, subject to. There's no tax code for money laundering. Money laundering is illegal. And so if the IRS is writing tax code, it is legal in all 50 states. I heard an attorney talk on it, and basically what it is it's called efficient breach. Technically, the seller is breaching the contract of their mortgage, especially if it has a due on sale clause, which we'll talk about here in a minute. But it's called effective or efficient breach. A short sale is efficient breach. Mm-hmm. So the mortgage does not allow you to do a short sale, but in the right situation, it may benefit the seller to do a short sale versus foreclosure, and they make the choice to do that. In some situations, it makes sense for the seller to sell their home with the mortgage still attached to it, especially with higher interest rates and stuff. They're able to get people to pay what they need so that they can walk away. And really, at the end of the day, the mortgage company just wants to get their payments. And so for the most part, it's not an issue, but we'll get to the...
So just as a point of clarification, you are or are not telling the bank about this?
We are not telling the bank.
You started to tell us about due on sale. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so this is probably the biggest question that people ask, especially loan officers, because they say, well, what about the due on sale clause? We joke about this in this community that we joined and we belong to called Sub 2. We call the due on sale clause the Sub 2 boogeyman. It's the thing that everybody's afraid of. And it's not that it doesn't exist, because the bank absolutely can say, you transferred the deed. There's a due on sale clause. We're going to invoke that and call the entire loan amount due. So the due on sale, it's important to talk about how often it actually gets called. Somebody just asked, if you do Sub 2, do you have to pay excise tax? Yes, you do have to pay excise tax because the deed is transferring. You are selling the house, and it's collected at closing. So back to due on sale. Sorry, I should not.
Multitask.
Yeah, I can't read the comments.
Ignore that until.
Yeah, I'm going to ignore the comments. I apologize. We'll read them back at the end.
We'll go back.
So due on sale, it's important to know how often it's actually being called. It is somewhere around 0.1%. So there's thousands and thousands of these transactions happening. Banks are calling due on sale clauses. What we found is that the ones that are calling them are very, very small local banks for the most part. They're not companies that have thousands of mortgages that they're managing. They're not major lenders. They might have 20 to 50 mortgages, probably closer to 20 small local credit unions. And they're literally watching all of the mortgages and they're paying close attention to them because they don't have very many. In that case, it's more likely to get the due on sale clause called. The biggest thing that we've noticed has an impact on whether due on sale gets called is when you're switching out the insurance. That is one thing that could notify the bank that the seller has sold the property, the deed's transferred, it's now in somebody else's name. However, we are using LLCs that have anonymity. And so you don't really know who even owns the LLC. It could be, there's lots of reasons why a seller would potentially put a home in an LLC, especially if it was owner occupied. Now they're renting it out. They move out of state or whatever, and they're renting that house out. It's not uncommon for people to put it into an LLC. So it's not automatically going to trigger the due on sale clause. I want to dumb down the due on sale clause. Basically what it is it's a clause in the mortgage, the original mortgage, that states that if you sell the property, they can call the whole note due. But a lot of people don't understand the way that it works. So let's say that you sell your house to me, subject to, we transfer the deed, and somehow we don't do the insurance right or something, and the bank is somehow notified that you transferred the deed. What they will do is they will send you a letter that states, we notice that the deed transferred, it's not in the original borrower's name. You have 30 days to transfer the deed back. Otherwise, we're going to invoke the due on sale clause. So there's probably 8 or 10 different ways to handle if the due on sale clause gets called, which is why we call it the boogeyman. It doesn't matter if they call it because there's so many ways around it. Now I'm not an accountant. I'm not a tax accountant. I'm not giving tax advice. I'm not an attorney. I should have probably said this in the disclaimers. I'm not giving you legal advice. But there are several ways to basically undo the sale. You do have power of attorney, so you don't even need the previous seller to do this. But basically, one way to handle it is, let's say that they call the due on sale clause. I transfer the deed back to you. We then enter into a lease with an option to purchase, and the lease terms mirror what your mortgage is. So let's say your payment's $1,250 a month. The payment is $1,250 a month on the lease option, and the balance, the amount that I purchased the home for, also mirrors the payoff of what your loan does. Now that the only thing that does is it changes the tax situation for me because I don't technically own the property. So I'm not going to dig deep into taxes because I don't want to confuse everybody, but there's several ways to easily go around the due on sale clause. A lot of times you can call the bank and just say, this is what happened. I bought the property subject to, and talk to somebody who actually can make a decision. And a lot of times they'll just say, okay, don't worry about it. We're going to go ahead and resend that letter. It's really, sometimes it's just an automatic thing that goes out. And if you call and explain, this seller didn't have a lot of equity. They couldn't sell traditionally. They needed to sell the property for whatever reason. And so this is how we had to do it. They're not going to call that loan due.
They don't want to have to sell the house.
Exactly.
Awesome. And since the mortgage is technically staying in the seller's name, what does it look like when they need to go and get another mortgage or purchase another home?
So that's probably the second most frequent question we get asked. So the seller is generally in one of two situations when we find these transactions. really it's in any transaction, but especially these transactions, a lot of them don't have equity, or maybe they're behind on payments, they're facing foreclosure, there's some kind of pain there. Those people are not automatically going out and getting another mortgage right away, and so it's not as big of a deal for them. They don't even care about it because they're just trying to save what's left of their credit and get current. So in those situations, you have to think of, we were talking about the due on sale clause. That's one benefit for the bank is, say these people are in arrears. We're bringing that payment current where it wasn't current with the original borrower. So we talked about that situation. They may be behind on payments. They're already struggling with their credit. The other situation is they're probably ready to buy another house now. So we would handle that in a different way. And there's a lot of ways to handle that as well. One, if they weren't going to purchase for, say, a year, all we would do is have a servicing company service the loan, and after 12 months, and sometimes even before 12 months, they basically just have to show the underwriter that they are not responsible for the mortgage payment anymore. And a lot of times they will basically only count 25% of that mortgage against their debt to income. So they would still qualify. They just have to qualify for the new mortgage plus that 25%. One way around that, so if we know that they are going to be purchasing, they're ready to purchase right now, what we'll do is we'll do a lease with an option to purchase. So we're leasing their property. And this is kind of outside the box thinking. So we can lease the property with the option to purchase it. We have the agreement of what we're purchasing it for, which is a sub-2 transaction. To get around that 25% qualification, we can lease the property for whatever we want. So now it has to be, when I say whatever we want, it has to be within some kind of reason for the area. If their payment is, say, $2,000 a month, and we want them to not have to qualify for that 25%, we can lease the property for $2,500 a month. We can't lease it for $5,000 a month if the market wouldn't support that. But say we do $2,500 a month, that covers that 25%. Now they really don't have to qualify for any of the old mortgage. And we do have to make 2 payments up front, which would just be part of the down payment. So there is, I don't want to get too far into the weeds on how we structure things because it can be a lot. But basically what happens is they purchase their new home. They didn't need to qualify for any part of the old mortgage. They just qualify for their new mortgage. And at that point, we exercise our option to purchase. So as soon as our other one closes, we can close on the subject to purchase.
That's a lot of information.
Yeah.
How can someone learn more?
So probably the easiest way to learn is to join the group that we joined. We may do more Zooms just to.
We spent a lot of time setting this up. I feel like we can.
Yeah, we're going to have to do more Zooms. We'll probably get better at them too, the longer we do them. But this is our very first one, I'm sure. Everybody knows that. But so learning more about the process, I would say, is just what I did. I joined a group, which there's several groups out there, but I would say I'm thankful I came across the one I did because there's so many reasons. I've been a part of a lot of different groups, a lot of different coaching programs in the real estate business. And just the way most of them are structured, they want to milk as much money as they possibly can out of you is the only way that I can say it. There's generally some type of fee up front. There is ongoing fees to stay a member. The group that we're a part of, it's a one-time fee. You never have to pay again. And the nicest thing about it, and we've talked about this quite a bit, is this community is like no other community I've ever been a part of.
It's a little cultish, I have to say.
It is a little bit cultish, but in a good way.
Yeah.
It is so many different people with so many different what we call avatars. So it could be a lender, it could be a wholesaler going out and finding deals. Most of the deals I found are on that group. I wouldn't have bought very many houses if it wasn't for being a part of that group.
It's been a really good way to get started.
For sure. But there's just something in that group where everybody's willing to help everybody. It's a go-giver mentality, which is one of the reasons why, I'm putting on this webinar is to help people get better. That is the go-giver attitude of everyone in the group. And they don't allow any negativity. If you're negative, you'll get kicked out of the group. That's one of the only ways to get kicked out. Once you pay that initial fee. It's not cheap. When I joined, I want to say it was just under $10,000. I don't know if it's gone up since then. Now that I've been a part of it, I mean, I would pay $50,000 in a second if I had to stay in it. There is so much value in the group that, I mean, I can't even explain it. You have to experience it. And a lot of mentorships out there are $50,000. And then there's an ongoing fee, on top of that. And so the amount of knowledge and training and everything that I've had access to already in, 6 months or whatever it's been. I think actually it's been 4 months. Not even that long. I joined the end of December, like the last day of December. So, 3.5 months I've been part of it. And I mean, I would already pay $50,000 to be a part of it if I had to. Yeah. So if you want to look, they don't actually accept everyone. You kind of have to apply to get in. It's nothing strenuous. They just have to make sure that you have the right mindset and that you're not extremely negative and those kinds of things. But if you want to join or at least look into joining, you can go to joinsub2today.com. So join, JOIN, sub2, SUBTO, today.com. Kyler, if you could put that in the side chat.
I'm doing it too.
Awesome. Yeah, that's pretty much everything that we had pre-scheduled to go over. So if anyone wants to ask any questions, we'd be happy to answer those.
I'm going to scroll back and look at some of the questions. Kyler's been doing an amazing job of answering them as you talk, but you can touch on them as well. And then if you guys want to raise your hand, I'll be able to unmute you. And
one thing I do want to say is the Sub2 group, the things that I've talked about on Facebook and on this webinar is the very tip of the iceberg of what you can do. I mean, there's novation agreements, which is basically keeping the house, say you're going to flip a house, keeping it in the seller's name, basically so you aren't paying closing costs twice, which is a huge benefit in Washington because the excise tax is so much. I bought a house and 3 days later closed on it, and the seller paid excise tax, which in turn is really me paying it, because to net them what they want to net, I have to pay them that much more. And then I sold it 3 days later and I had to pay excise tax. So doing a novation agreement and keeping it in their name and having an agreement of what those proceeds splits look like. It allows you to, offer people more money for their home than you could if you were, making them a cash offer, for example, because you're not paying closing costs twice. So, but there's so much more information in that group. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of hours of training in there that you can go watch. So you can get bogged down in that, to be honest. So you really have to kind of do the base learning, which they walk you through that in the course, in the initial training that you take, and kind of show you where to find things. And so you take that basically beginner stuff and learn the basics. And then you figure out, what do I want to dive further into? Wraps is one thing that I really like, because I don't necessarily want to be a landlord on a lot of people or on a lot of houses and have people contacting me all the time. Wraps, lease to own, things like that. It's, when it's a wrap, it's their house. They purchased it. They're not calling you. And it tends to be the same with lease with an option to purchase. Now, the downside of that is they can purchase them, and so you're not necessarily building that long-term wealth that you would by holding all the properties. But we're going to do a good mix of those, and hopefully do about 50-50.
Allison asked if you're using your own money or private money. Kyler answered, but do you want to touch on that?
Yeah, so far I've used my own money, but it wouldn't be uncommon for people to use other people's money. In fact, I'm a lender, and so I've lent money on other people's transactions. The terms are good for the lender, but a lot of people, a lot of investors wouldn't be able to, they don't have their own money. They wouldn't be able to do these transactions without it. Now, it's important that the lender and the investor are both going into it knowing what the end game looks like, what the end plan is, what exit strategy A and exit strategy B are. Wraps, honestly, are a really good one to get into if you're using other people's money. And the reason for that is, like I said, you might get a 5 to 10% entry fee. And when you go to wrap it, somebody could be, we give people 3 different options, and the price will adjust depending on, and the interest rate will adjust depending on the amount of money they're putting down up front. So the more money they put down up front, the lower the price is. The less money that they're putting down up front, the higher the price is going to be, and the higher the interest rate is going to be. So we could put 5% down and we could get 15% up front. That would, if we were using other people's money, that would allow us to pay off the 5% that we borrowed from someone and put money in our pocket right up front, in addition to that spread that we're making every month. So that, in my opinion, is a great exit strategy for people who are using other people's money. There are ways to do long-term rentals, but you're generally going to have that investor's money for longer. And it's important that you cash flow even after you're using someone else's money and paying them a payment on it. So it's a little bit more difficult. Now, with that being said, when I use my own money, I have other investments that I do. I have places I can put my money. In fact, maybe that's one thing we'll share over time, but I've got several places that I can put my money that I get a 9% return on that money, regardless of, what happens. I get an interest-only payment every single month. The nice part about it is I don't ever have to worry about it. I don't have to think about it. They just deposit the interest in my account every month. And 9% is pretty good. So when I'm doing a deal and I'm using my own money, I basically pay myself 12% on my money, if that makes sense. So, if I put 20,000 down, I'm paying myself back a payment of 12% interest only every single month. And I put that in an account. So even though it's my money, I'm treating it as if I'm borrowing it from somebody else because it cost me money by not having my money in that other investment, if that makes sense.
Kyler mentioned Gator lending. Do you want to touch on that?
I really don't.
That's a whole nother call.
Yeah, I mean it's a different group put on by the same people. It's more of the lending side of the business. It is. There's lots of different kinds of Gator lending. It could be something as small as earnest money deposits. When you go under contract, you have to put an amount of money down. Roughly 1%. Sorry, I'm going to mute everyone. It's roughly 1% of the purchase price. On traditional transactions, if you're buying from a wholesaler, a lot of them just automatically do 5,000 regardless of what the price is. So if you don't have that money, I can lend you that money. So we can talk about that another time. I feel like I don't want to switch to the lending side and talk too much about that.
Sounds good. Tom was asking, how soon does a seller get their equity?
So sometimes they don't have any equity, so they wouldn't get any equity out of it. Everything is up for negotiation. So if there is a lot of equity,
it's probably not the best sub two.
It's probably it may be a good sub two, but it may not be. It depends on what you're doing with the property. So some of them have a balloon payment due. If the seller is, say they take 20,000 up front and they finance 80,000, it might be 0% interest for 6 years or something, and you're just making that. The nice thing about that is every payment you make, whatever amount you agree on, where you can still cash flow, you're paying down the principal by that amount every month. So it's nice to get 0% seller financing because you can't get 0% anywhere else. So there may be a balloon. It may be a 5-year balloon. It may be a 7-year balloon, 10-year balloon. I've seen 15 or 20-year balloons. So it really depends on, what the seller wants and what you can offer them.
The main point is the word creative.
Yeah.
And you can pretty much do whatever.
Yeah, there's no rules. It's all up for negotiation.
Awesome. One question was, do you have to pay excise tax? I think we touched on that. You always have to. Government always gets their piece. What wholesalers are you using?
There's lots of different wholesalers in the group. I belong to a lot of different Facebook pages where I'm looking for deals. I'm on a lot of different buyer lists, so I'm getting deals emailed to me and text to me all the time. In fact, I just put a moratorium on purchasing for myself until I deal with some of the transactions that I've already got closed and dispose some of those. Either get them rented or get them sold. Now I say I've put a moratorium on, but if I see a 2% interest rate and a house that looks really good that I feel like I can wrap, I have the luxury of being able to hold them a little bit longer. So I'll most definitely be buying them.
Yep.
Sorry, Kyler.
How do you handle it if you need to communicate with the mortgage holder? And how are you keeping track and making sure that the monthly mortgage is getting paid?
Let's break that into 2 questions. The first part was, what do I do if I have to contact them? I really don't need to contact them for the most part. So basically what we're doing is before closing, we get the login to the mortgage portal. We're going in there, we're setting up my phone number, my email as the main ones on the account. Everything has two-step authentication now, and so the seller has to be involved to get you into the mortgage portal, and then you change the phone number and the email address to yours so that you don't ever need them again. But you do have a durable power of attorney, and so it authorizes, it's notarized and everything. It authorizes you to deal with the mortgage company on the seller's behalf. And I mean, that's a normal thing. When we were doing hundreds of short sale transactions, the first thing we did is get an authorization signed so that we could deal directly with the mortgage company on the seller's behalf. So we have that ability. We have a durable power of attorney. If we need to make any changes to anything, we are legally authorized to do that.
So that kind of answers the question about how you're making sure that the monthly payment is getting made, because you can set up auto bill.
Yes and no. We set up auto pay. There's a servicing company that's put into place, especially if we're wrapping it. We don't do it on all of them. If the seller is worried about it, we'll do it. It's an extra fee every month. If it makes the seller more comfortable, we'll do it. But generally, auto pay and us sending them receipt of payment. Another thing that I've started doing recently, just to show them that one of the downfalls of selling your home like this, if you have nobody representing you and you don't really do your due diligence, is because you're not pulling credit and things like that. You don't necessarily know the person that you're selling to is somebody who's going to make your payment. So that can be a little bit scary. So I understand that part of it. One thing that I've started doing recently is I send the seller a credit report. So it's not required, but I've started doing it. I send them proof of funds to show them that I'm financially stable to make the down payment of whatever it is. And that I have reserves to continue making their payments even if I don't have a renter for a year. So that makes them feel a lot more comfortable. But if they want us to, we'll set up a servicer. If we're wrapping it, we always have a servicer set up. There's multiple reasons for that. If we ever want to sell the note, they have to go through an RMLO. So they basically go through a qualification process.
Can you explain what an RMLO is?
It's basically the same thing as if you were getting a regular mortgage, but it's really just to comply with Dodd-Frank and that kind of thing. The lender can say, I wouldn't ever lend to these people, and we still have the option to lend to them. So we're making the decision. It's really just to stay compliant. And if we ever go to sell that note, anybody who buys that note purchasers are going to want to see that everything was, all the I's were dotted and the T's were crossed, and that it's been serviced by a servicing company. And those notes can be pretty valuable. There's so many other steps. I mean, you can partialize notes. You can sell portions of notes if you ended up needing money down the road. So it's not like you're locked in.
Cool. Mackenzie asked, and I think we kind of already answered, do you use hard money to get the seller what they want up front instead of your own funds when seller financing? So yes and no.
Not usually.
Not usually. We are not financial advisors, but can you roll a 401k into this idea as an investment?
I am not a tax accountant, but I hear a lot of people in the group talking about using their self-directed IRA.
I think it has to be a self-directed. I don't think it can be a 401k.
Yeah, I don't know a lot about that, so I'm not even going to address it, but I know self-directed, people talk about it a lot in the group. So
More of a legal question, but would a lease to own option apply to someone going through a divorce?
Nobody wants to get on here and ask
I
us
was gonna
questions
say-
in person.
CB real estate, do you want to?
I mean, I would just need more information on that of what you mean specifically.
I can unmute CB real estate. There you go.
Well, you know, when you're married, you got to have your spouse sign off on the purchase of real estate. Does that apply when it's a lease to own? Because by the time you go to own, I'm assuming the divorce would be finalized. It's more of a legal question, but I'm just curious if you've encountered that situation.
I haven't. I personally would err on the side of not having any unknowns down the road. So if I was structuring that deal, I would make sure both parties were on the same page, or I wouldn't personally do it.
Got it.
Is this mainly for sellers who need out of their homes? Or would you take over the balance of a loan by purchasing the property that way?
Can you read that one more time?
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump, if you can unmute yourself. And JB.
Donald Trump says, is this mainly for sellers who need out of their homes and you take over the balance of the loan by purchasing the property that way?
No, it's not. I mean, there's a lot of people that have equity that are doing this type of transaction. There's so many different reasons why it makes sense. That really it can be any situation. A lot of the homes don't have to. There's so many other exit strategies that, short-term rentals and pad splits, and there's so many different things that you can do with these properties that it doesn't have to cash flow long-term rental. I'm currently purchasing the safest deals that I can possibly purchase, and so I want them to cash flow as a long-term rental as a backup plan. And so, but the one that Kyler and I just purchased together, that will not cash flow as a long-term rental. So we're doing midterm rental. The income is higher on it. And so, short-term rental, a lot of times you're making more money. Those situations are a lot easier to take somebody who has equity in the property and be able to afford to pay them a payment on their money as well. Sometimes there's deals where, the seller wants 100,000 of their equity up front. And that either works or it doesn't work for certain people, or, there's other parts to the deal of why it may or may not make sense depending on what the buyer's looking for. But yeah, depending on your exit strategy, it's going to kind of determine what you can do up front and who it makes sense for.
You are being asked, do you think that this is doable for non-agents that don't have the knowledge or access to real estate realm?
Definitely. And I say that because I'm not using a lot of my knowledge of the real estate market and traditional real estate in what I'm doing.
I think it would almost be helpful to not have the real estate mindset. I think it kind of handicaps us at times.
Honestly, I think the biggest thing about being a real estate agent is it makes me more comfortable reaching out to real estate agents and asking them, to help me with a property that is in their local market. Because I understand that there's agents out there that they can use the extra money and, they have some extra time and I think I'm just more comfortable reaching out to them because I understand real estate agents and what the profession looks like. So, but that's really the only area where I really feel like it benefits me. It could benefit me if I was reaching out to real estate agents. A lot of wholesalers, how they get their deals is they will reach out to real estate agents that have listings that have been on the market for 4 to 6 months and they're having trouble selling them. It may help to have some perspective of being on the other side of that, and how I would have reacted if anyone had ever come to me. So maybe talking to them a little bit differently, because I've been in their shoes. I mean, we haven't been in the shoes of having a listing that hasn't sold in 4 to 6 months very many times in 20 years. But, just knowing how to talk to real estate agents may help a little bit. But as far as like buying the way I've been buying from wholesalers, I don't think being a real estate agent has given me any benefit whatsoever.
It's definitely a very eclectic group on Sub 2. Lots of different backgrounds. So
Yeah.
I think anyone could do it. Okay, more questions. I think I cleaned
Anyone
up.
that's not camera shy that wants to come ask a question.
What's the best way you found to approach a potential seller? Are you going strictly through the agents? Are you reaching out to them directly? And how do you navigate that conversation?
I haven't done much wholesaling. I've only wholesaled one deal, and that was just because I did an inspection on it and decided it wasn't a property that I wanted to deal with this far away from it. That's one thing that I should probably mention is I am not seeing these in person. And so I rely on an inspector, a professional to go through and be my eyes on the home and tell me what potential issues there are. And I'm really relying heavily upon them to, take 360 video of each room so that I can really get a grasp for what I'm purchasing. And so I haven't done a lot of going directly to sellers, but how you would approach them, there's so much information on that in the group. The hard part for us is we're running an actual real estate team here, and so I haven't had a lot of time to devote to building a team of people to be following up with sellers. So sorry for that kind of non-answer because I haven't really done it, but I know a lot of people call agents directly. I know a lot of people, they'll go door knock.
I was going to say there's a lot of people
foreclosure
door knocking off of lists.
Yeah. I mean, if I was going to do it in the local market, that's probably something that I would do. Our local market's the only place that we buy flips. We're not flipping homes across the country. There's a lot of opportunity out there, so it's hard not wanting to flip some of them. But you would really need somebody you trust. I mean, we'd do flips probably in Arizona, maybe in Florida if my cousin was interested. He knows the construction. He's got a construction background. I would have to really trust somebody to partner with me in those areas. But yeah.
Can you explain a little bit about working with the wholesaler and where the wholesaler fits into the transaction?
So the wholesaler is really just the person between me and the seller. And it could be the wholesaler to the agent to the seller. Sorry. And so the more people that you involve in the transaction, it can be a little bit more difficult. Sometimes, honestly, that one transaction that I wholesaled, that I decided I didn't want to own, there was still room in it I got a good enough deal on it that, I could raise the price $15,000 and still find a buyer. I found a buyer in 12 hours. So a lot of times there's multiple wholesalers involved. And so, each of those are charging a fee and each of those are an area of separation. So it's good to, get direct with the seller at some point. But really the wholesaler's job is they don't get paid unless it closes. So they're helping coordinate things. They're communicating with the seller for the most part. We also have transaction coordinators involved. Thank goodness, or I'm not sure I would want to do one of these transactions because there's a lot to it. So we hire a transaction coordinator that's well versed in these types of transactions, and they do pretty much everything for us. So, but as far as the wholesalers being involved, they're just kind of a go-between.
Awesome. Where are you looking to buy in the US right now, outside of Washington?
We will buy in most markets, 3-bed, 2-bath or bigger. Pretty much turnkey. We aren't looking to do much work. Has to cash flow as a long-term rental for the most part. If not, probably in an area where midterm rental makes sense, which is around hospitals and areas like that. But we'll buy anywhere other than New York, New Jersey, California. We might buy in Oregon, but probably not.
There's a theme.
Probably, I mean, we'll buy in Washington, but it would have to be a really good deal, or a potential flip property. One that I wouldn't have to be a landlord.
I would say a lot of the ones you've done so far have been military towns. That's been a common theme.
Lots of military towns, lots of red states.
Yep. Donald Trump says, so don't buy in blue states, is what you're saying.
That's not what I'm saying.
Not completely.
But if I'm going to be a landlord in a state, I want to know that the laws are landlord friendly.
Yeah, there's some protection.
Yeah.
Awesome. What other questions do we have? Tom,
Are you going to do this again?
We are willing to do it again. I guess, honestly, the best thing that we could do is get some feedback from you guys as far as maybe what parts you want to dive deeper into, whether it's wraps, whether it's just more into how subject to works, a specific question that you have on any part of it.
This was definitely a little surface.
Yeah, it was very, very high level. There's so much that we could go into that I think we would be looking for what you guys want more clarification on.
Yes, we did record this and we will post it in a way that you guys can share.
Since we've never done it before, I'm assuming it's not difficult, but we will post it as soon as we can. Shouldn't be too difficult.
I know how. Should start our own group in Washington.
We might. One thing we don't want to do is we aren't looking to replace the real estate business. The real estate business is still our number one. Kind of why we started this is regardless of what everybody thinks, real estate agents don't make a ton of money. And so, and the money that they do make, they don't have retirement, they don't have things like that. And so they have to invest for their own future. And so this is more of the investment side of the business for long-term, retirement and stuff like that. So, I mean, we still need our day jobs and we still plan on serving our clients. And other than preparing for a webinar, this doesn't take an incredible amount of time for us to do. So now that this webinar is over, and it's really not even preparing for a webinar, it's preparing for the first webinar. I personally built this beautiful wall behind us. Just getting good audio equipment set up. There's one thing that I hate about Zooms is if the audio is horrible, I can't stand to listen to it. So hopefully we did a good job with that.
I think you did better than me. Apparently, I am quiet, so I have to.
Well, I talk louder. But we bought good equipment for that reason, and just setting up lighting and getting the camera and everything coordinated since we had never hosted a Zoom before. We don't have to do that anymore. So now, if we want to do videos, we can even shoot videos. It doesn't have to be a webinar. We're definitely willing to do more webinars. We may even take portions of this and use them as shorts on social media and stuff like that. So I guess tell us what you want us to do.
One question is, what is the best way for a new investor to get started with limited capital?
Honestly, find a way to get in that group. If you have to borrow money, figure out what you have to do to get in that group. There's so much information there. They will take payments over 6 months. And I get it. It's a lot of money. But there's so much value there. Sell a vehicle if you have to. Sell something. Figure out a way to pay for it. I wouldn't suggest that if I didn't find a huge amount of value in it.
And as far as the first transaction goes, I would say hard money.
As far as the first transaction, team up with somebody who already knows what they're doing. That's a lot of what happens in that group. It's one of the cool things that I've seen in there is people teaming up, splitting deals and, having somebody that's a lot more experienced, walking through the transaction with you. So when you have questions, you have them answered. If you need somebody to talk to the seller, somebody who's closed lots of transactions dealing with the seller, that's a good person to team up with.
Yep. Awesome. Can you give a ballpark of the capital required? Oh, yeah.
So as far as joining the group, which I know is not what you're asking, a few months ago, it was just under 10 grand. So if you join that group, that's roughly what you're going to be paying to get in there. As far as getting your first transaction, you could easily be into it zero down using somebody else's money. So I would not assume that you have to have your own money, just because that's what I'm doing. I had my own money, so it made sense for me to use it. It's easier that way, but that's one cool thing about the group is it is not difficult to find people to lend you the money. You post what you're looking for, and you have 10 people willing to do that loan. So,
but we're not talking like 20% down, those sorts of things. We're talking like,
yeah, our average deals probably, if I had to guess, somewhere between 20 and 25,000 at closing. If that's what you were asking, regardless of if it's our money or somebody else's, that's kind of the average entry that we're seeing. Now there's ways to go out and get your own deals. I just pay for the convenience and pay for somebody else to spend their time doing that. Because I get to weed through the deals and pick the very best ones that I like. But you can also wholesale those deals, and that can be a way for you to fund the deals that you do want to keep. So just getting in that group and learning, how to contact people, what lists to call, what lists to even pull, to be able to get in contact with the people who may need to sell their home. I've given a couple examples of people to call, whether it's pre-foreclosures or somebody who's had their house on the market for some time. There's 100 other kinds of people that you can call, and there's lots of ways to make money in the group. I just choose to not wholesale because I don't have time. Any other questions? All right. Well, we're right at an hour and a half. So if there's no other questions, if you guys could help us out and just Let us know what other questions you might have after this. One of the big reasons I did this was to my messages were just getting blown up after I started posting some of the stuff that we were doing. And so I just decided it's going to be best for me to handle all of those questions and explain what we're doing in one place. So that's why I wanted to do this. But if there's anything more specific you want us to get into, Chris, we're going to be going to lunch or coffee or something and catching up. Chris is actually one of my old clients who's since gotten into real estate. And so we go back quite a ways. I don't know how long ago that was. I sold his house in Cherokee Bay, but probably
2009.
Yeah. So it's been a while ago. I was going to say 15 years. So I would have been right
He's
on.
going to be at the Rainiers baseball game too.
Oh, sweet.
On Friday.
So yeah, we can chat there as well. But yeah, I'm willing to partner with people. I'm willing to help you individually if you decide to pursue this. I'm willing to partner. I'm willing to lend. So yeah, just reach out to me, and any feedback is great.
I will be emailing out the recording, probably posting it.
We'll post it on
and
Facebook.
and then we'll put it on Excel's page as well. So there will be lots of places.
Cool. Well, thank you all for taking the time to show up, and have a good evening.
Thanks, guys.